Chapter 22 is actually a fairly short chapter. You can go through it if you want to in detail, but we've covered a lot of this in other chapters. And I'm going to go through Chapter 22 and just highlight the high points that I think I want you to know. We should know there are two environmental protection agencies we have to be concerned with. One is there's this EPA, okay, Environmental Protection Agency. That's a federal agency. And then Illinois has one too, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. So Illinois does have its own agency. And all that requires is that sellers of property must make full disclosure of any environmental impact that their property has and they have knowledge of. We talk about various hazardous substances covered by the EPA. One is asbestos, lead-based paint, houses built prior to 1978, radon, this insulation, there's certain insulation that we no longer use, that's with this foam insulation that used to get sprayed in. Mold is also considered a hazardous substance. And this is kind of where it shows, if you can read this through. We have at the bottom of the screen, we have radon that's coming up through the rock below our house into the basement of the house typically. That's why radon, you don't really have to worry of anything about radon if you're anywhere above 3 stories. So if you live in a condo 3 stories above, you're not going to have any radon worries. What other environmental? Well, we've got carbon monoxide that might be coming in from a leaky hot water heater. We might have asbestos and asbestos ceiling tiles or on our roof, asbestos roofing tiles that we might be using. There used to be asbestos used in those that might create a problem in older houses. And you've got your perhaps mold that might be in a house as a result of maybe a leak somewhere in the foundation of the house or along the side of the house somewhere that's leaking behind the walls. Mold comes from water and from standing water, and that's usually where it starts, and so you have to investigate for any mold in the house. Lead-based paint, if this house was built prior to 1978, then we have a lead-based paint disclosure that we have to make to anyone, whether it's a person that's buying the property or anyone who's leasing the property. So one of the first things you want to do as a real estate salesperson is find out when that house was built. Our lead-based paint, what we have to disclose to prospective tenants or prospective purchasers is before they sign a sales contract or sign a lease, we have to give them a pamphlet, lead hazard pamphlet, and we also have to give them a disclosure statement to any buyers or tenants. And we have to keep any records, because we're going to keep a copy of this lead hazard pamphlet, or I'm sorry, the lead hazard statement that we give. We have to keep that for 3 years. And notice with lead-based paint disclosure, the agent signs as well as the sellers and buyers. So this is a real important obligation of ours as agents. We can't pass that on. Radon, if we're in a radon area before the seller signs a contract, we have to give them a guideline, a pamphlet. We have to disclosure a pamphlet, and particularly if houses have been found to have radon, then from then forward every subsequent buyer has to be given this disclosure that at one time they found radon, and then they also have to be given the pamphlet that goes with it. A lot of individuals with radon, if there's a property that's had radon in the past, will just include those with their listing sheets so buyers pick them up as they're going through the property, so they get this notification before they sign their contract. Again, keep the records for 3 years. Agent also signs. Mold, there aren't really any federal regulations. Sellers only really have to disclose mold if they know of mold. If buyers suspect mold, they can certainly have a testing company at their expense come out and make a mold test. Not required for the seller to do that. And, your sellers sign that. Don't you, as a real estate agent, help them sign that. They do that on their own without your help. If they want someone to help them answer those questions, that's something they ought to talk about with their attorney. Some other environmental concerns, don't think that they're particularly important for you, but you might want to know we have laws for underground storage tanks. These are for commercial properties that have had some kinds of tanks down there that have had some kind of chemicals in them. Think in terms of all the vacant old abandoned gas stations that certainly have these storage tanks underneath them to store all of the fuel oil, the fuel that they've held. If we are by a disposal site, a landfill site, we have to make knowledge of that to potential purchasers because of the leakage that might take place under those landfill sites that might be leaking environmentally contaminated water into our properties under our land. Brownfields are the opposite of greenfields. Brownfields are typically abandoned industrial sites that need to be cleaned up before anyone purchases them. Your liability as a licensee is become familiar with all of the common environmental problems in your area. Kind of look for signs of contamination, particularly if you're a commercial broker. Advise for testing if you're not sure. Don't ever make a statement that something is or isn't non-contaminated. Don't give advice on environmental issues. Use all the disclosure forms that you're to be using. And now turn to the quizzes for Chapter 22 and complete them.